The directive from the throne. The Great Hall of the Rose Prime was carved from obsidian mined from the hearts of extinct stars. It was vast, echoing with silence, except for the rhythmic hiss of breath from the gathered commanders, 12 of them, each a master of death. At the center, a holographic projection of Earth rotated slowly above the silver dais. A blue marble, insignificant, or so the Empire had believed. The grand strategist of the Empire, Varn Drek, stood with both hands clasped behind his back, gazing down at the planet with contempt. Humanity, he spat, as if the word itself offended him. Primitive, reckless, unaligned. And yet, one of them dares defy the Emperor's directive. A chorus of low murmurs echoed. On screens behind him, surveillance footage rolled. Earth fleets patrolling their own system, trade vessels mysteriously going silent near Terran space, and, at the center of it all, Commander Darius Kael. He was a human male, ex-military, tactical prodigy, and, more importantly, a man who had single-handedly blocked 3 attempts at Imperial annexation without firing a shot. Somehow, his deterrence always came at just the right time, just the right place. Embassies burned before the Empire could land. Infiltration teams vanished. Orbital probes returned scrambled data. Enough theatrics, growled High Executor Zarn. Send the 12. The room stilled. Even among the Empire's war-hardened elite, those words carried weight. The 12 were not an army. They were a whisper of death. Each of them had ended worlds. Enhanced by cybernetics, bred for silence, trained across 1,000 blood-drenched moons. They did not fail. The strategist turned slowly to the semicircle of warriors behind him, 12 assassins draped in cloaks woven from stealth fiber. Their helmets pulsed faintly with adaptive neurogel. No two looked alike. One floated off the floor entirely. Another crackled with cloaked plasma charges. But their eyes, visible behind thin visors, shared the same dead calm. Kael resides on Earth, Drek continued. But do not be deceived. This is no simple assassination. He has embarrassed the Empire. He must not only die, he must be erased, obliterated, made example of. No one replied. They simply turned as one and left. Thousands of light years away, deep within the rocky wastes of post-urban Colorado, Commander Darius Kael stood on a cliff edge, wind tugging at his worn combat coat. A battered satellite dish protruded from a bunker behind him, humming with encrypted chatter. He raised a hand to his earpiece. Static buzzed. Then came a voice, alien, mechanical, and strained. They've launched. The 12. You're the target. Kael didn't flinch. Estimated arrival? 6 hours. They're using a zero-signature stealth vessel. You won't see them coming. I don't need to. He looked out at the jagged mountains before him, veiled in twilight mist. I've already seen this play. The line crackled. You should run, Darius. Not even you. Click. He cut the channel. He turned and walked back into the bunker. Inside, it wasn't a fortress. It didn't need to be. Not when the entire region had been rigged over the last 5 years with countermeasures, false paths, sound traps, misdirection nodes, and hidden drones tuned to pick up footfall differences. A digital screen blinked to life as he approached. 12 red icons glowed faintly. Come on then, Kael muttered, unzipping a crate filled with old Earth steel. Non-digital gear immune to jamming and hacking. Let's see if your reputation holds up. 6 hours later, silence fell over a stretch of wilderness just outside New Geneva. The assassins moved like shadows, their steps lighter than the air they displaced. No animals fled. No sensors pinged. The ship had vanished into orbit, cloaked. Extraction was not needed. It was assumed. They fanned out, 2 by 2, tracking heat signatures toward a lone bunker nestled into the terrain. The first pair breached. Nothing. A bed. Empty. A kettle, still warm. Walls covered in maps and lines, deliberately messy. It was bait, but they realized it too late. The floor beneath them erupted in a silent flash. When the dust settled, only one remained, damaged, blind, crawling toward the exit. A boot came down on his neck. Darius Kael loomed over him, eyes cold. 2 down, he whispered. The transmission feed flickered across the assassin's network. A still image uploaded. The remains of their fallen, dissected, arranged deliberately, grotesquely, purposefully. 10 red icons now glowed. Kael's voice cut through the comms of every assassin. Empire sent 12, he said. Try harder. The game begins. The cold, high-altitude wind sliced through the dense pines as the remaining assassins of the 12 moved into formation. They had crossed the wilderness, their cloaks blending with shadows, their footsteps silent against the frozen earth. Despite their training, despite their technological enhancements, doubt was beginning to crawl beneath their sleek armor. Something was wrong. Too many variables had shifted too quickly. Kael's handiwork was already evident. The first assassin had fallen into a trap, a makeshift pit laced with sharp stakes. The second had been left for dead, his internal systems overloaded with an electromagnetic pulse. 2 elite operatives rendered useless before the sun had even set. Now only 10 remained. They communicated through encrypted channels, voices robotic and distant. Phage, their leader, had barely uttered a word since the first attack. His mind was elsewhere, calculating. He would not let the human get away with this. Move into the outskirts of New Geneva. We'll use the city's infrastructure to our advantage. Phage's voice, calm and controlled, cut through the tense silence. His command was obeyed without question. The city was a labyrinth of abandoned industrial complexes and half-destroyed urban sprawl. A perfect battleground for a predator who knew how to manipulate it. Kael was their target, but they had underestimated him. They had thought he would be a simple military strategist. They had assumed that once they closed in, it would be over. But the human had proven resourceful, more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. Kael crouched beneath the wreckage of a half-collapsed warehouse. His eyes flickered over the city's grids, abandoned streets, broken lights, and cracked concrete. The Empire's assassins weren't far behind, but they would never find him. Not if he had anything to say about it. He had studied them, researched their weaknesses, and more importantly, their arrogance. The Empire's finest assassins had arrived with the expectation that they would be gods on Earth. But Kael knew better. He had fought battles before, real wars with real stakes. He'd learned the hard way that arrogance, no matter how finely honed, could lead to fatal mistakes. A faint signal blinked on his HUD, motion detected. 2 signatures, close together. Right on time, Kael muttered under his breath. He slinked through the debris, moving like a shadow. His body, a blend of raw human determination and tactical ingenuity, thrummed with quiet energy. There was no time for hesitation now. He knew the assassins wouldn't wait for him to strike first. It was always about outlasting them, making them believe they had the upper hand until they were already caught. 2 of the assassins, one tall, one heavily armored, had split off from the group. They had likely been assigned to flank him, expecting a chase. What they didn't know was that they were walking straight into a trap. He reached into his pack and pulled out 2 small devices, miniature drones with adaptive camouflage. He set them to hover just above the ground, following the assassins at a careful distance. The drones were fitted with electromagnetic pulses, just the thing to disable the enhanced cybernetics of the Empire's killers. Their own tech would become their undoing. The 2 assassins moved closer, unaware of the danger. Their comms buzzed in Kael's ear, but the words were unintelligible, caught in static. They were close enough now. He could hear their boots on the pavement, the hum of their energy blades charging, the crackle of their stealth suits adjusting to the surroundings. He pressed a button on his wrist console. The drones activated. A loud crack split the air as the EMP wave detonated. The assassins froze. One dropped to his knees, clutching at his chest. His chest plate sparked violently as the pulse overloaded his systems. His once deadly movements turned jerky, uncontrolled. The other assassin, the larger of the 2, staggered but managed to stay upright. He drew his plasma blade in a desperate attempt to stabilize himself. But Kael was already moving, closing the distance with a predator's speed. The large assassin turned, just in time to see Kael's boot smashing into his gut, sending him crashing against a concrete pillar. His armor cracked, and the assassin let out a strained gasp. He attempted to swing the plasma blade, but Kael was faster, grabbing the arm and twisting it at an unnatural angle, rendering the weapon useless. With a swift motion, Kael ripped the helmet from the assassin's head, revealing a young face, one full of fear and disbelief. The human assassin didn't need to say a word. His face told everything. "Two down," Kael whispered. He stood over the fallen assassin, his breath steady and calculated. The smaller, disoriented assassin attempted to flee, but Kael was already gone, melting into the shadows of the city. The remaining assassins, 8 in total, received the transmission. Their comrades, now nothing more than broken husks, were all that remained. "This is impossible," Phage muttered. "The human is using our own technology against us." And yet they pressed on. The game had only just begun. Hunter of Hunters. The streets of New Geneva were grave silent. Phage stood on a rooftop overlooking the crumbling skyline. Below, the fractured ruins whispered of humanity's past. Abandoned factories, moss-covered billboards, rusting transit rails. But none of it mattered. Not now. 6 of the 12 were gone. Not disabled. Not wounded. Gone. Dismantled. Discarded like scrap. The remaining 6 assassins stood in formation behind Phage, their confidence fraying like old wiring. Their breathing was tighter now. The bravado had faded. What remained was confusion, unease, and a growing fear they'd never admit aloud. "This is not a soldier," said Vexer, one of the last psychokinetic-enhanced assassins. "This is a predator." Phage didn't disagree. Kael hadn't just outmatched them. He had unraveled them, moved through the city like smoke through cracks, striking only when it hurt most. Their own tech, their strengths, had become weapons in his hands. They tried to track him through thermal imaging. He flooded the district with radiant heat signatures using jury-rigged heat cells from an old power plant. They attempted motion detection. He released a swarm of pigeons and rodents, scrambling their sensors into uselessness. Every trap they laid, Kael sprung in reverse. Every corner they took felt tighter. Every step more dangerous. "He's guiding us," Phage muttered, like prey into a kill zone. Deep in the labyrinthine tunnels below the city, Kael moved with calculated purpose. Dirt streaked his jawline, sweat matting his hair, but his eyes burned sharp, alive. He knew they were getting nervous. That's when elite killers made mistakes. And he needed them shaken. He had studied their profiles. Not just tactics and abilities, but minds. These weren't just assassins. They were experiments. Obedient but never challenged. Conditioned to win, never to adapt. That was Kael's edge. He had grown up in the chaos of collapse, where hunger taught patience and war taught pain. He hadn't been made for battle. He had earned it. From a hidden wall recess, Kael retrieved a battered tablet connected to hacked Empire comms. Their chatter was encrypted, but he didn't need words to know what came next. The silence alone was telling. "They're hunting me as a pack now," he murmured. He grinned. "Let's make it hurt." 2 hours later, Phage gave the order, "Sweep the old subway tunnels." Kael's location had narrowed to the lower sectors. If he was going to make a last stand, it would be down there. For assassins descended. The tunnels stank of rust, decay, and scorched circuitry. One of the lights still flickered, casting long shadows. The group moved with caution, stepping over shattered rails and thick cables. Then the floor beneath the second assassin dropped out. A wire-triggered mechanism. Primitive and deadly. She barely had time to scream before she landed on an array of sharpened rods repurposed from industrial piping. Her internal armor bent. Cracked. Failed. Her neural link cut out. 3 left in the tunnel froze, weapons raised. A metal clang echoed behind them. Kael burst from the darkness. He moved like fury. No wasted motion. No theatrics. The first assassin swung a blade. Kael ducked under and drove his knee into the attacker's hip, shattering it. He grabbed the man's weapon and used it to parry a second swing from the left. The energy blade hissed as it slid against metal. Kael headbutted the attacker, grabbed her throat, and slammed her into the wall. 2 down. The third tried to run, too late. Kael hurled the stolen blade. It pierced the back of the fleeing assassin's neck with a sizzle of boiling flesh and wire. One clean motion. Phage watched the biosignals vanish from his HUD. Another 3 lost. Just him and 2 others remained. He said nothing, but his breathing had changed, barely perceptible, faster. He turned to Vexer and the last assassin, a silent humanoid called Thresh. "Change of plan," Phage said. "We make him come to us." Kael found a quiet spot in the tunnels and slumped against the cold stone. 8 dead. 4 to go. His knuckles were bruised, ribs cracked. Blood seeped from his arm. He didn't care. They were learning now. Finally. Shifting strategy. Consolidating. But it was too late. He tapped his comm and whispered to the Empire's stolen feed. "You're not hunters." He paused, voice low and deliberate. "Your prey that thought it was special." Then he switched the channel. A moment later, across the city, a severed assassin arm landed with a thud at Phage's feet. It was still twitching. The pieces returned. Rain fell like cold needles as the storm broke over the shattered ruins of New Geneva. High above the city, atop the skeletal remains of an orbital elevator station, Phage waited. Only he and 2 of the 12 remained. The rest were dead. Not missing. Not detained. Dead, reduced to pieces. Their cybernetics fried, their biocores crushed, their remains turned into messages. Kael had sent one's helmet impaled on a steel rod, another's torso left hanging from a rail bridge, a third stuffed with explosives and launched into orbit, rigged to transmit one word when it detonated: learning. Now, Phage stood drenched in icy wind, eyes scanning the rusted platforms and shadows stretching below. He knew Kael was close. He wanted him close. This time, there would be no chasing. "We hold," Phage told the others. "He will come, because he wants to finish this himself." Kael didn't want to finish it himself, but not for glory, not for vengeance, for the message. The galaxy believed humanity was weak because they played fair, because they talked first, because they chose not to conquer. But people like Kael, people forged in dirt, blood, and ruin, existed to remind them. Humans didn't survive because they were peaceful. They survived because nothing could outlast their will. Kael climbed silently through the exposed steel of the old station. Wind howled through the frame. The remaining assassins waited above, thinking they were the ones setting the trap. They were wrong. He'd spent the last 2 days feeding them false trails, fake positions, voice loops, even a hacked corpse designed to simulate his biosignature. All of it funneled them here, where he had full control of the infrastructure, where the old Earth defense satellites still had line of sight. One word from him, and this entire platform would become a crater. But he didn't want to end them from distance. He wanted them to understand. Thresh heard it first, a faint clink behind a rusted crate. He turned to signal. Too slow, a blur of motion, then the glint of cold steel. Kael slammed into him, driving a blade through his gut with brutal precision. Thresh tried to counter, swinging a shock baton, but Kael caught the wrist, twisted, and crushed it. Thresh crumpled to the floor. Phage and Vexer turned just as Kael rose from the shadow, soaked in blood, face calm. "You finally stopped running," Phage said, voice low. "I never ran," Kael replied. "You just didn't realize you were the ones being chased." Vexer lunged, fast, a blur of psychokinetic energy, but Kael was already moving. He slid beneath the strike, slammed a sonic charge to the floor, and detonated. The shockwave shattered nearby windows and sent Vexer flying into the scaffolding. His body spasmed, crashed, didn't rise again. Only Phage remained. The two stared at each other across the platform as lightning split the sky. "You were supposed to be an example," Phage said. "A message to the rest of your kind." "I still am," Kael replied. Then he attacked. They clashed in the rain. Kael's raw power versus Phage's precision. Blades hissed, fists cracked against bone and armor, blood mixed with oil. Kael was tired, bleeding from the shoulder, ribs broken, but he kept coming. Phage landed a glancing blow to Kael's jaw. Kael returned it with a punch that shattered Phage's visor. The assassin dropped to one knee, breath ragged. Kael stood over him, chest heaving. "Tell your empire, we didn't ask for war. But if they send death to our door, He reached down, seized Phage's helmet, and tore it off. We return it. A week later, a small escape pod drifted silently into the Rose Prime orbit. Empire ships intercepted it, expecting survivors. Instead, they found a box. Inside, the shattered components of 11 assassins. Arranged neatly, deliberately, on a strip of Terran cloth, stitched crudely by hand, was the message. Send 12 more. The Emperor did not reply. The fleet was recalled, probes rerouted, and across the Empire, a new name began to spread. Kael. Not as a criminal, not as a soldier, but as a warning. In the mountains of Earth, Kael sat beside a fire beneath the stars. His wounds were healing. His message was sent. He looked up, the stars cold and infinite. I gave you your pieces back, he said quietly, but you'll never find the ones you lost in yourselves.